Today, I want to share a story that will touch the very depths of your soul and perhaps change the way you look at your own life forever. It is a journey into the heart of a mystery that stayed hidden for decades, tucked away in the quiet corners of a mother's love. Before we begin this sacred exploration of the human spirit, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel to join our growing family. Please stay with me until the very end because every layer of this story is a stepping stone to a profound realization you do not want to miss. My mother was a woman of immense silence and even greater grace, moving through the world like a gentle breeze that everyone felt but no one truly understood. She carried an inner stillness that felt almost spiritual, a calm that seemed to defy the chaotic storms of the everyday world. Growing up, I often watched her staring out the window at the setting sun with a look that was both peaceful and deeply haunting. I never questioned that silence until the day I found the small, velvet box hidden beneath the floorboards of her old sewing room. The box was unremarkable in appearance, yet it felt heavy with the weight of 1,000 unspoken words and years of suppressed emotion. As I touched the cold fabric, a strange shiver ran down my spine, as if the object itself was exhaling a long-held breath. I hesitated to open it, feeling like an intruder in a sanctuary that had been sealed off before I was even born. My heart hammered against my ribs when the lid finally creaked open, revealing not jewels, but a collection of yellowed letters and a single rusted key. The letters were addressed to a name I had never heard spoken in our home, a name that felt like a secret code to a different life. Each envelope was sealed with a wax stamp of a lotus flower, a symbol of purity and rebirth that seemed out of place in our humble town. As I pulled out the first parchment, the scent of dried jasmine filled the air, triggering a distant, fragmented memory from my earliest childhood. I realized then that my mother was not just the woman who raised me, but a guardian of a truth that could shatter my entire reality. As I began to read the delicate handwriting, the words seemed to shimmer with a desperate, beautiful intensity that I could barely process. They spoke of a promise made in a garden far away, a pact between two souls that transcended the boundaries of time and social expectation. My mother had written these letters herself, but the voice in them was vibrant, passionate, and filled with a fire I had never seen in her eyes. It became clear that she had lived an entire lifetime in the shadows before she ever stepped into the role of my parent. The more I read, the more I felt the floor shifting beneath me, as the foundation of my family history began to crumble and reshape itself. There were mentions of a sacrifice so great that it felt almost divine, a choice made in the dead of night to protect something far more precious than a reputation. I looked at the rusted key lying in the bottom of the box and wondered what door it was meant to unlock in this web of mystery. My hands trembled as I realized the next letter in the stack was dated just days before my own birth. The contents of that specific letter stopped my breath entirely, as it spoke of a destination I recognized from my mother's old, tattered maps. It mentioned a monastery hidden in the high mountains, a place where the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds was said to be thin. The writing turned frantic toward the end, mentioning a shadow that was following her and a light she had to keep burning at all costs. Just as the writer was about to reveal the identity of the person she was fleeing from, the ink became an illegible smudge. I spent the next several hours trying to decipher the blurred lines, feeling a sense of urgency that I could not logically explain. It felt as though my mother's spirit was in the room with me, urging me to find the courage to look where I had never dared to look before. The rusted key seemed to glow in the dim light of the sewing room, beckoning me toward the attic where her oldest belongings were stored. I knew that if I turned that key, there would be no going back to the simple life I had known. The attic was thick with dust and the echoes of the past, filled with crates of books and discarded furniture that smelled of cedar and thyme. I moved toward a small wooden trunk tucked away in the darkest corner, the one object that had always been strictly off-limits during my childhood. My mother had told me it contained only old fabrics and patterns, but the weight of the key in my hand told a very different story. When I inserted the key into the lock, it turned with a click that sounded like a thunderclap in the silent house. Inside the trunk, wrapped in a silk shawl of deep indigo, was a manuscript titled with my mother's maiden name and a date from 40 years ago. Beside it lay a photograph of a young man with eyes that looked exactly like my own, standing in front of the very monastery mentioned in the letters. He was dressed in robes that suggested a life of spiritual devotion, and he was holding a small child whose face was obscured by the sun's glare. My heart stopped when I realized the child was wearing a locket that was currently hanging around my own neck. The manuscript was not a diary, but a detailed account of a spiritual lineage that had been passed down through generations of women in our family. It spoke of a gift of intuition and healing that was both a blessing and a dangerous burden in a world that feared what it could not control. My mother had spent her life hiding this power, fearing that the same shadows that chased her would eventually come for me. I felt a surge of energy pulse through my veins as I turned the pages, realizing that her silence was her greatest act of protection. As I delved deeper into the manuscript, I discovered that my mother had not been hiding from a person, but from a destiny she felt I wasn't ready to carry. She had intentionally dimmed her own light so that I could grow up in the safety of the ordinary, free from the weight of our ancestral expectations. However, the writings warned that the gift could only be suppressed for so long before it began to manifest in ways that could be overwhelming. I felt a sudden warmth in my palms and a clarity of vision that made the dust motes in the air look like dancing stars. The final pages of the manuscript were written in a different tone, one of deep peace and a sense of completion that brought tears to my eyes. She wrote that she knew the day would come when I would find this box, and that her only wish was for me to embrace the light without fear. She explained that the man in the photograph was not just a teacher, but a guardian who had helped her transition into the life of a hidden healer. The truth of my heritage was finally laid bare, and it was more magnificent than any story I could have ever imagined. I sat in the attic for a long time, letting the weight of this new identity settle over me like a warm, protective cloak. I realized that my mother's life was not one of sadness or missed opportunities, but a masterpiece of deliberate, loving sacrifice. She had kept the secret not to exclude me, but to give me the choice she never had, waiting for the moment my own soul would wake up. The silence I had misunderstood for years was actually the sound of a mother's prayer being answered in real time. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the same horizon my mother used to watch every single evening. Now I saw the world through her eyes, vibrant with spiritual energy and connected by invisible threads of love and purpose. I understood that my journey was just beginning, and that I carried her strength and the wisdom of our ancestors within every cell of my being. The secret was no longer a burden, but a torch that I was now ready to carry into the future with grace. Thank you for walking this path with me and listening to the whispers of a story that was meant to be shared with those who seek the deeper meaning of life. I hope this journey has sparked a light within you to look closer at the love and sacrifices that have shaped your own existence. If you found peace or inspiration in this narrative, please remember to share it with someone who might need to hear these words today. I look forward to our next soulful encounter, and until then, may you find the extraordinary hidden within your own ordinary moment.